The fourth net already burns for you. The fourth net already burns for your blood. You are too late. The fourth net already burns for your blood. Burns for your blood.
Hello gamers, so previously I decided to min-max the damage of a single hit, and I did that using Sunder, and my final goal with that was to kill Arbiter with a full party in one single hit, and I did that in my last video. But a lot of people told me that I can actually take it further, because I could try to kill him in one hit with his 80% damage reduction that he gets at the start. And so I did that. It turned out to not actually be that hard, mostly because I had already min-maxed my build to Oblivion to begin with. But I did make quite a few changes, enough to make this build update video right here. And probably the biggest one is that I'm now using Sacred Flame instead of Chernobog Shield. Sacred Flame goes up to 73%. I have a 70% because, well, I can't really afford that. I ended up voling them myself and I got two 70%, which is quite nice. So I'm using that. And technically Chernobog goes up to 75, which is higher, but Chernobog requires us to path here to Glancing Blows in order to do that, which is 5 skill points. And Chernobog also has the upside of letting us allocate Lay Siege and Offensive Stance for 150% more total damage. Now, as I mentioned in the last video, any form of crit damage increase is worth about 4 times its weight in value in terms of damage, purely because of how high the crit multiplier I have right now is. So, as you can see, it's a little bit higher than that in actual combo. It gets to very high numbers, even higher if we land a non-critical hit due to these nodes, and this node, and a few other things. So overall it gets about 6,000% when we're actually fighting Arbiter. Previously it was at 4,000%, but I changed the tree up quite a bit to more or less ignore everything that is not crit damage. Well, not completely everything, because kind of the way it works is you have your base damage, which is then multiplied by the crit damage. So the way to see it is, in this scenario I have this much damage, and this much damage is multiplied by this number right here. So if this number is low, then the crit damage does not do as much. So there is that to take into account. Now, I did get some upgrades as well, most namely the ring. I did finally manage to get the crit damage vol on it. It only took like 2,000 divines worth of rings to try this on. This ring also sadly does not have all attributes, and it's tier 2 flat fire, but the crit damage more than makes up for it. I mean, just look at the difference. That's like 116% total crit damage. 156% actually. That's a lot. And I also ended up using Elemental Conflux, because somehow I missed this skill last time, but it is a lot of damage. Since my damage is almost 90% fire, if this rolls to the fire modifier, it's basically like a 4x damage multiplier, because it may say 73%, but that's gonna multiply your fire damage, right? But then your effects that say gain damage as, such as Sacred Flame, are gonna benefit from that. And then, you know, it's all multiplicative. So multipliers multiply themselves, and that turns out being a lot of damage. That's why in the testing, all of the hits that ended up actually doing the full 1.3 billion total to get through his 80% reduction and actually one-shot him anyway are the ones with the fire conflux. It's just not really possible otherwise with my setup. And yeah, in it I'm using all the mastery skills to give it +1, a lot of +1s. And yeah, it's a bit of an annoying skill to play around with, because Arbiter decides to talk for like 10 seconds straight when he starts the fight, so basically it's a 1 in 3 for this to work. But, I mean, if you do enough runs like I did, it will work eventually. So yeah, that's really the main differences I did. Oh, I also decided to bring in Ambrosia. This is the second benefit of using Sacred Flame. So Sacred Flame says that enemies in your presence resist elemental damage based on the lowest resistance, which means that lightning and cold damage are no longer useless like they were in my previous testing, because Arbiter has 75% to all resistances, which means that if I use Ambrosia, yes, I am giving Sunder 75% of its damage as lightning, more or less, because big flask numbers. But that damage is going to get reduced by 75%, and that basically makes it 1/4 effectiveness, which is bad. It's like a 15% damage boost in total by that point. But because Arbiter will now resist lightning damage based on his fire resistance with this equipped, since we reduce it by a lot, he will take a lot of damage from this lightning damage that we have here. Conflux does require 205 int, so I had to play around with my stats a little bit. Luckily, that was completely possible thanks to this reduced attribute requirements val that I have on my hammer. I did also try to make a new hammer with a better val. It's currently 5 out of 6 mods perfect. I was gonna try to keep going and wait until that pans out to make this video, but I'm out of divs, I'm out of omens, and yeah, I would still have val it after and hope for a good outcome. So currently it looks like it's not happening because I just have nothing selling. So yeah, this is just gonna rot in a tab forever, probably, sadly. Now, I did have to get a new Megalomaniac, which is now using Jack of all trades, which actually is like 100% damage in total because of our stat distribution. Now, to talk about the tree has changed a lot. So going this way costs 13 skill points in total to reach here from here. Whereas this way, while reaching here is also 13 skill points, it gives us access to Moment of Truth cluster, which is 55% crit damage. And we always have this active because Solar Orb has Control Destruction, so it cannot crit, and it will count as a hit. And it also gives us access to this useless node, which we don't care about, but also 2 crit damage nodes right here. And then the Deadly Force cluster. Basically this pathing over here is exactly the reason that compared to last time I have about 1000% more crit damage. I did not path to Deadly Force because, well, it would deactivate Moment of Truth and Desensitization. Well, not Desensitization, the nodes behind it. So yeah, not pathing here, even though it would be a lot of damage. I would need to crit for it, and it would be less damage in total. So, yep. We also get Killer Instinct, and we're always on low life because of Coward Legacy. So I just quickly reallocated some stat nodes to be more optimal with Jack of all trades. I had not really noticed that, but yeah, by having 220 of each, it is marginally better. It's basically just 8% increased damage, since my lowest is now 220 instead of 205. And yeah, the rest of the tree is more or less the same. I did ignore the increased damage against low life enemies clusters over here with finality and finishing blows, because as I mentioned in the last video, if this little 15% crit damage cluster right here is worth about 60% damage, then the way to see it really is that this node is the same as finishing blows. It's 60% damage. So I more or less just took all of these and decided that these nodes here are just too many points to invest into. I did get some better Tabula jewels as well, like this one. This is what I'm putting in Tabula. Increased damage against rarity uniques, attack damage, and critical damage. This one is absolutely perfect. Most of them are not. Most of them are slightly off, but they're still quite good. I decided not to vol these purely because it very often turns into disappointment, and it very often just ends to me putting them in some random tab because they end up bad. So yeah, the amulet is the same, hammer is the same, obviously, and yeah, that's about it. Honestly, I don't really know if there's anything tankier than Arbiter during his damage reduction, but if there is, I would be willing to try and see if I can one-shot it with a single hit. So if you have any recommendations on what I should point this big boy Sunder at, you can feel free to do so in the comments. And